Investigative journalist John Sweeney is all too familiar with Putin's tactics. He's out with a new book on the Russian leader called Killer in the Kremlin. And he joins me now. Welcome to the program, John. So this is not the first time we are talking about potential catastrophe at the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Just a few months ago, there had been shelling around that plant as well, and the IAEA had been sounding alarms then, too. Why do you think Russia continues to make such dangerous steps that could not only impact Ukraine, obviously, but Europe at large?
You've got to understand, Bianna, that Vladimir Putin has been, as a teenager, something like when he was 12, he found a mentor who changed his life, and this mentor was a gangster. He ran a mixed martial arts club, which Putin went to in St. Petersburg. And when this mentor died, on his gravestone, the phrase was, "I am dead, but the mafia is immortal." We're dealing with the crime boss of the Gambino family or somebody like this. And what he likes to do, and this is absolutely part of his playbook, is to threaten terrifying violence. And one of the things that Europe and the whole world is afraid of is some kind of nuclear disaster. So I think what's happening in reality is that the Russians and the Russian army, the Russian killing machine, is failing. It's not doing very well. They reversed out of the Battle of Kiev. They lost that. Then they went to the east, and they got the Lugansk county or oblast. Yes, that's true. But that cost an awful lot of Russian blood and treasure. They haven't yet secured the Donetsk Oblast in its entirety, and the Ukrainians have made them fight very, very hard for that. But then the American long-range rocket artillery, the HIMARS system, I think it's changed the game, and it's blasted at least 12 major Russian ammo dumps. And so what I think we're looking at is Putin trying to frighten Europe, trying to frighten the world by saying we can shell these places. Now, practically, these nuclear power stations are very, very strongly built. Yes, I know about Chernobyl, and I write about it in my book, but that was a massive internal disaster because the actual design of the reactor was wrong, and the Soviets knew about it, and they suppressed it rather than tackling it. That's a problem with this kind of system.
But any system, I would imagine, would not be built to sustain continued rocket attacks. I mean, no one would imagine that there would be a war ensuing where you have Russian troops not only infiltrate the facility, but also, it appears, now focusing on strategically, at least as you're saying, to garner a threat to the rest of the world, attempts to sabotage a nuclear facility.
Yes, but what he's doing is he's trying to generate fear. That's his playbook. Do not mess with me. Do as I say, or you will suffer.
Is it working?
Well, I think the Ukrainian army beg to differ. And the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people are saying, we know who you are, we know what you're like, and we're standing up to you. And obviously this is kind of worrying, but there are a number of reasons, which I set out in my book, that I think that Vladimir Putin is a fragile monster. And I don't think that his strategy is working. I think this war is a catastrophic mistake for humanity, for Ukraine, for Russia, but also for Vladimir Putin's grip on power. And let me take you through some of those reasons. First of which is Alexei Navalny, who is the effective leader of the opposition. He's locked up. He's a great critic of Putin. He's a great critic of the war. And yet he's still alive. Vladimir Putin could kill him like that, but why not? Because Vladimir Putin is afraid of having him killed in prison, because he fears that people in Moscow and St. Petersburg will rise up and say, what are you doing?
But
Secondly,
Can I just push you back on
Yes.
that? Because even Navalny's own team had said as soon as this war began that Navalny's life was at its greatest risk yet since he had been arrested once he returned to Russia. Because if there was ever a time for him to be killed in prison, it would be then. That they also did not believe that Vladimir Putin would go this far and invade Ukraine. And that having been said, when you're talking about people on the streets in Moscow and Leningrad, you know, revolting and outrage, yes, they came out in support for him when he came back to Russia, but we don't see that many people on the streets there. We know there's a lot of suppression, but we don't see that many people, even at the height of their protest in the early days of this war, out protesting against the Kremlin.
The point is that Navalny is still alive, so that Putin, if he was all-powerful, he could have him, you know, he's his great adversary, Navalny, and he's still alive. That, for me, to me, suggests weakness, not strength. Secondly, he hasn't called for universal conscription. And again, the reason for that is he's afraid that people in Moscow and St. Petersburg will say, why on earth are you sending my 18-year-old son for your stupid war? And so, time and again, I've seen this at the, on the outskirts of Bucha in early April. You know, the Russian soldiers we saw weren't ethnic Russians. They were Buryats, Russian Mongols from
ethnic minorities,
very close
right?
to China. Yes, exactly. So he is not using the sort. Now, why is that? The reason, again, I think, is because he's afraid that if he calls for universal conscription, mums and dads in Moscow and St. Petersburg will say, we're going to protest against this. We do not want our sons to go to war. And there is a series of things like this. I also think that if, for example, Putin hits the nuclear button, I do not believe that button will work, because I think the Kremlin machinery doesn't like this war and is unhappy with him. We also hear that the gossip is the CIA have said to the Russians, if you use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, things will not go well for you. What they specifically said is that we will target Russian military places with masses of conventional cruise missiles, but in a way that will humiliate Putin and the Russian killing machine without escalating to nuclear. So we're in a game of threats with somebody who, I say in my book, he's not just a killer, he's a serial killer. He's pathologically enthralled to violence and to threats. And he threats again and again and again. And if we give him what he wants, he will only ask for more. And I think what we're looking at here with the nuclear story, yes, it's alarming, but at the same time, it's part of his playbook. And the best way to see the end of this war is to give the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people the money and the heavy metal they need to defeat the Russian killing machine.
Is the war, in your opinion, now at an inflection point as we see continued fighting there? Obviously, in the east, we are seeing Russia now regroup and send some of their troops to the south there, as Ukraine is trying steadfastly to reclaim some of that territory that Russia has taken, specifically around Kherson. There have been analysts that say perhaps now with the HIMARS and the additional support, both financially and militarily, from the United States, largely, that this is an inflection point, a turning point for the Ukrainians. Do you agree?
I think there will be one soon, but I also think the Americans are supplying the Ukrainians with the ammo and the big long guns. And the price of that is the Americans are saying to Ukrainians, please do as we ask you to do. And the Ukrainians are complying, partly because they've got no choice. But the American policy on this is softly, softly. What they're trying to do is, I think the other day they've announced $1 billion in defense aid, but normally it's less than that, 700 million. They're saying to the Ukrainians, you can't have our best jets, you can't have our best tanks, you can't have our best armored personnel carriers. That's a deliberate policy. What they're trying to do is to prevent Putin from seeing one single piece of aid or a piece of kit as something which will allow him to escalate to a new threshold of violence. And that's a deliberate American policy if you study it. I don't necessarily agree with it. I just think the faster you destroy the Russian killing machine, the faster Putin will be in trouble, and then we can hope that there is a new Russia under somebody far better. Let's hope so. But the American policy is consistent and, I think, smart. So what they're doing is they're making it much more difficult. What it is they're boiling the Russian frog slowly. They're not dumping the frog in the heat. They're slowly turning up the heat again and again and again. At some point, it'll shear, and at some point, the Ukrainians will get Kherson. I think they'll get it back, and then they'll move further east, and they'll move south. I say this because I know my Ukrainian friends are such. Their spirit is so high, their morale is so high compared to the Russians.
Well, there's another miscalculation as we close here on Vladimir Putin's part as well. He thought he would get Kyiv in 3 days, and here we are 6 months later.
Yeah, so the longer the war, the worse it is for Vladimir Putin. He's a fragile monster.
We'll have to leave it there. John Sweeney, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.